Hey folks, and welcome to the Truck King YouTube channel. Sitting next to me is the all-new 2022 Nissan Frontier, and you can already tell we're having some fun out here today off-road. Now I said all new because I would actually categorize this as a really heavy refresh, and of course we're going to tell you why. So in this video, we'll go off-road, we'll hit some mud and some water, and then we'll drive on-road and we will tell you everything you need to know about this new Frontier. Let's kick this one off with the walkaround. So under the hood of the new Frontier here is a 3.8 liter V6 that makes the most horsepower in the midsize segment. That's 310 horsepower, 281 pound-feet of torque, and that is sent through a 9-speed automatic. And I'll remind you, that is upgraded from a 5-speed, so that's a pretty big jump. Now, one little thing I want to touch on for Canadians, this is the first time you can get this powertrain in Canada. Last year in Canada, there was no Frontier. In the United States, they had this new engine in the old body. We didn't do that here. So if you want this new powertrain here in Canada, this is the first time you can buy it. So, the truck you are looking at right here is a Pro 4X, fully loaded with the luxury package, so we got all the goodies. But first I want to talk about Pro 4X. It's the off-road model, so you get a lot of off-road upgrades, an aluminum skid plate up front and a couple steel skid plates further back. You are getting all-terrain tires, of course. That is a set of Hankook Dynapro AT2s. Wrapped around 17-inch wheels. A couple unique styling things like the larger plastic over fenders, stuff like that to let you know it's the off-road model. But then maybe the most consequential upgrades, a set of Bilstein shock absorbers and a rear locking differential. Now let me explain to you why I said this is a heavy refresh. Now of course Nissan calls it all new, but it's still the same frame in this Frontier. Now this Frontier is a little bit bigger than the outgoing model. 5 inches in length is the biggest difference, but that 5 inches is all up here in the hood, in the front end. So you're not actually getting more usable space in the cab or back there in the bed. Another carryover technology, which you can kind of tell feels old now, hydraulic rack and pinion power steering. Most trucks today, almost all of them, use electronic power steering, and that actually limits Nissan too. This vehicle doesn't have Nissan's Pro Pilot Assist, and it's because it still has hydraulic power steering. So when we're looking at this truck now, you can kind of see some of the corners Nissan cut, and I think it was really, you know, to be budget conscious. Now that doesn't make it a bad truck, so please stick around because we got lots to talk about, but you just need to understand sort of the origins of how this truck got right here. Now let's look at the business end of the Frontier, and there's a couple changes here. First of all, you do have a nicely damped tailgate. I always like that. Now, you do get a factory spray and bed liner from Nissan, or you can get one. The other features back here include LED lighting. That's nice. These rail systems where you can move around your tie-down cleats. And there is a plug over here in the corner, 120 volts and 400 watts. Again, nice to have the plug in the bed. And now if we're talking about bed lengths, Nissan offers 2 beds. This is a 5-foot, or you can get a 6-foot bed. Now, if you get the King Cab model, you're only going to get the 6-foot bed. If you get the Crew Cab, you can actually choose between 5 or 6. Well, you've probably already seen, but we are in rural Quebec, and the colors here are absolutely gorgeous. Fall in this part of the world is just the best.
So at this point, I've had about 2 hours behind the wheel, and I just want to kind of give you my first one-off impressions. Number one, it's a Frontier. To me, it feels very much like any Frontier I've driven over the last 15 years. So yeah, same frame, a lot of the same running gear, the same hydraulic steering. So is it any wonder that I'm kind of going, yeah, okay, I know the feel of this truck. That's not a bad thing. It's a familiar thing. And being that a lot of those things were already sort of well known and proven, I got no issue with that. Instead, what I'm getting here in the cabin is just a lot of the upgrades. What they've really done is they've brought the interior, the electronics, you know, the various different gauges and clusters up to the standard of what you're going to get today. But at heart, this Frontier hasn't changed that much.
Yeah, I get that same feeling. And, you know, just specifics, you're talking about now a 9-inch screen up here in the sack. I believe it's a 7-inch screen in front of the driver, wireless cell phone charging, USB ports and USB-C ports, heated steering wheel. All of those things is what Dad just said, right? They really went out and said, we need these creature comforts because we don't have them and our competitors do. But they didn't really upgrade the trucky stuff, right? Just about the exact same tow rating, a tiny bit more payload, and then we're in the Pro 4X, and I'm going to show you the off-roading right now, but my feel for it is it's good off-road, but it's not better than it was before. So that's sort of, yeah, like Dad mentioned, and it's what we got across to you right off the top. Nissan's calling it all new, but it's kind of not.
No, you've got more power, you've got a better powertrain, better transmission, which again is just one of these things that, yeah, man, you've got to upgrade as time goes by. But when we get around to showing you like the fuel economy numbers, they're claiming that they're better, but they're incrementally better. Mm-hmm. There is no great, huge improvement there. So you can be happy about the fact that you're getting more horsepower and torque, but you're not saving a lot at the pump.
Yeah, and I mean, I barely penalize them for that. What's more frustrating is you don't have an option. A lot of brands, sure, you can get the big engine and you know you're going to pay for it at the pump, but then they offer you a 4-cylinder to say, hey, if you don't need it, here's your chance, here's your choice. Here in Frontier, from base all the way up to fully loaded,
at the end
you're
of
getting
the
the same
street,
powertrain.
turn left.
Stupid nav system. Blew my stand. So we're off-road now in the Frontier. We're trying out the hill descent control. Pretty smooth, actually. And the big thing, Toyota kind of introduced their system first. And the one thing with the crawl control system was that it was really loud. It sounded like, you know, the truck was doing some really bad things because it was using the ABS and pulsing it. This is silent, quiet.
It is. It actually, yeah. It works really good.
And that's exactly what you want from your hill descent control. If you use it. That's the other thing. Dad and I were already talking about this. We're not huge fans, you know. If I was out here off-roading myself, I don't think I would be stopping to turn on hill descent control. But in some situations, it might come in really handy.
You know, and before we get the nasty comments, yeah, it does depend where you live, okay? We don't have a lot of mountains where we live. We don't deal with huge drop-offs and crevices and things where, yeah, you'd probably appreciate the steadiness of hill descent control. Mm-hmm. Around here, it's sort of like, yeah.
So yeah, right now we're driving on an unmaintained road. So again, it's not an off-road trail per se, but it's pretty gnarly. There's been some pretty big ruts out here, a little bit of water, a little bit of mud. We're getting a good feel for the Pro 4X. I mean, I still think it feels capable. Tires feel like they have nice grip. One thing though, Dad, I want you to talk about is the steering, because this is still hydraulic steering. How does that feel to you out here?
Yeah, it's heavy. It's heavy steering, and I think more so because so many guys have switched to electric, so that I'm used to just a lighter feel in most of the vehicles that we're in. So I got into this and I'm like, holy jeez. You know, you gotta eat your Wheaties, man, if you're gonna go to work with this thing.
Yeah, you're clear. We found a couple exposed rocks here. I'll call this the Moab test. Oh, there's some slip. Now I doubt you're locked up yet. Yeah, you're gonna climb in your front end now big time. And I'd steer driver a little bit. You might need to lock up, let's see.
We are locked up.
Oh, you are locked up, okay. Okay, yeah, because that locker helped you right there for sure. 9.6 inches of ground clearance, this is what you're looking at right here. I was pretty impressive. I know it never shows on camera, but these are some steep rocks. Nice. As I've mentioned a few times in the video, we've been driving around rural Quebec today, but actually this is the Ottawa River. So that's Quebec, that's Ontario right there. This splits the two provinces. We crossed into Ontario at a bridge further down, and now we are waiting for the ferry. And that ferry is going to come pick us up and take us and our Nissan Frontier back over to Quebec.
Right now we're on a ferry crossing the Ottawa River, and I just wanted to say that we don't normally get a chance to test vehicles on a ferry. So, how well does the Nissan Frontier travel on a ferry? It passes.
So we're off the ferry now. We're just doing our final drive leg here. It's just a nice paved highway. Dad gave up the steering wheel. So I'll give you a couple impressions. First of all, the power feels great. 310 horsepower, most in the segment. It puts it down really well. It does feel like a quick truck, I would say that. Dad mentioned the steering, and I'll go on about it a little further. It is just so much heavier than you feel in basically any other modern vehicle, honestly. Now, you first get in, it takes a little getting used to. I think that could be said of a lot of things, but once you're used to it, driving down the road here, it's just normal. It's no big deal. My first initial impression was, oh, this is no good, but after using it for a bit, you just learn to adapt to it. And actually the nice thing about it is the on-center feel is excellent, because you get way more feedback out of this wheel than you would out of an electronic power steering system. And then I also noticed this truck feels just planted. Like you take your hands off the wheel and it just keeps on going straight regardless of what's going on. I don't know if that's because of the weighting of the steering, but it certainly feels that way. Beyond those things, feels like a nice little truck. The seat's really comfortable. I don't know how you're feeling, but I feel comfy over here. We have enough space, two big Elmers in one little truck, and we fit fine. Headroom's good. Yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. No big complaints. I guess we've talked about it. I'll go over it one more time. The complaint is that they probably could have done more. Should they have done more? That's up in the air, and that'll be decided by the customers at the end of the day.
That no truer words were spoken, because everybody could always do more.
Sure.
That is one of those perennial journalistic comments that you can't go wrong making, because nobody can argue with it. Everybody could do more, but they didn't, and the customers will decide. Damn straight, that's what's going to happen. We'll see who buys it and how many.
Okay, Dad, here's the next test. Another thing they just improved a tiny bit, the turning radius, which has always been horrible on this truck. So we're in a residential neighborhood. Show me a U-turn. And this is at an intersection, keep in mind. And look, you can't do it. Can't do it. He would have had to eat some lawn there. So like I mentioned, turning radius on Frontier is better, but it's still not great. And right here, I'll put up the numbers and you'll see it is still the worst turning radius in the segment. Now let's talk about the pricing. And specifically, we're gonna deal with Canadian pricing. US prices, I'll just throw them up here. So for the Canadians, the Frontier will cost just a hair under $40,000 to start, and you do have to know that every Frontier in Canada will be four-wheel drive. We're not getting two-wheel drive models here. Now, I think the more interesting decision is that the top trim of Canada's Frontier is Pro 4X. And actually, if you want the 9-inch touchscreen, if you want the leather like we have it here, you have to get Pro 4X. So Nissan Canada went and said, look, Pro 4X is our volume model. That's what we sell the most of. So basically, that's what we keep wanting to sell the most of. But it bugs me a little because if you want all this luxury stuff, it doesn't necessarily mean you want better shocks and a locking rear differential. And for a lot of people, you're never going to need a locker in the rear end. So it feels a little bit like Nissan is upselling you on the off-road stuff in order to get the luxury stuff. And you know, that drives up the price a bit. Top pricing here in Canada for a loaded up truck, you're talking about around $47,000, $48,000. And if you want to know how it stacks up, the Tacoma here in Canada also starts at 40. The Ford Ranger undercuts it a little bit, starting at about 36. But you know, if you do talk about that $40,000 number for a base truck, Nissan is actually right there with their competition.
So we've spent a couple of hours with this Frontier today. We've been off-road with it, we've been on-road with it. We've gotten a fairly decent impression. And I said it in cab, I'll say it again now. One of the things about this truck for me today is that it's as familiar as any Frontier I've driven over the last 15 years. Now, is that a bad thing? No, because I've always liked Frontier. So the traits that I'm feeling in this truck now that haven't changed are just fine, because what works, works. You don't always have to mess with something just because it's got to be new. On the flip side, they've done the things they needed to do. They've brought it up to date, they've given it a decent look. The interior, the materials, the infotainment, the electronics, that stuff has all been brought up to date, so you don't feel that you really are driving something that's 20 years old. So folks, that's it for this one. But just remember, this is only the intro. We're going to be getting one of these trucks shortly. We'll be taking it to our test facility at Ironwood, and you know there's a lot more that we're going to do with it. So remember to come back soon and see what we're doing there. But before you go, please go below, hit like, hit subscribe, hit join, be part of our channel, and then come back really soon to see what we're doing at Truck King. Thanks.